Well, let's now join live our US correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Sherwin, listening to that report, it just told of a story of someone whose career was more than massive. I would imagine that right now Americans are busy taking this in, as the rest of the world.
Massive is certainly one word. I mean, many people regard her as a national treasure. She was the undisputed queen of soul, but ailing, Peter, over the last number of years. There was a flash picture in that report that I did, where you can really see, sort of juxtapose the healthy and buxom Aretha Franklin that we had come to know over the years to a very frail-looking individual standing at that Elton John AIDS Foundation 20th anniversary gala, her final performance here in New York in November last year. And really you could see the toll of probably the medication, the pancreatic cancer, of course, confirmed by the family. Let me just read you the statement that the family released a short time ago, Peter, if I may. It is with deep and profound sadness that we announce the passing of Aretha Louise Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Franklin, 76, passed away Thursday morning. They give the time, 9:50 a.m. local time, at her home in Detroit, Michigan, surrounded by family and loved ones. Franklin's official cause of death was due to advanced pancreatic cancer of the neuroendocrine type, which was confirmed by Franklin's oncologist. They have a quote here: "In one of the darkest moments of our lives, we are not able to find the appropriate words to express the pain in our heart. We have lost the matriarch and rock of our family. The love she had for her children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and cousins knew no bounds." Of course, the statement continues. It ends with this line: "Funeral arrangements will be announced in the coming days." There's been reaction also from former President Bill and Hillary Clinton. I can read that statement to you in a short while. We are, of course, also waiting for reaction from former President Barack Obama. Aretha Franklin, of course, performing at his inauguration, the inauguration of America's first black president in January of 2009. She was a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor given in the United States. That was bestowed on her by George W. Bush in 2005. The recipient of 18 Grammy Awards, Peter, including a Lifetime Achievement Award. We can stand here all day and talk about the honors, including honorary doctorates that Aretha Franklin received. This is the passing of a national treasure. I mean, I was here when Michael Jackson died many years ago, and I would think that it would be on that level, the kinds of tributes and outpouring of love and adoration that we are going to see, not only from the celebrity world, but from ordinary people on the streets, whom we hope to engage with in the hours ahead.
62 years active as this great musician, and despite her illness in the last few years, she was singing through the pain and continuing to perform for her fans.
Peter, you make a very good point. I mean, when you say singing through the pain, she was essentially a very private individual. The confirmation of pancreatic cancer coming from her oncologist, but not from Aretha Franklin herself. She certainly wasn't someone that wanted to dwell in pity or certainly people's sympathy. She wanted to come back and come back strong, as she did, one imagines, since that diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, when she underwent surgery to remove a tumor in 2010. She came back. She had lost a lot of weight. She was a regular performer at the White House, including, I might add, a jazz concert, one of the last concerts at the White House under the presidency of Barack Obama, where the late Hugh Masekela also performed. So it would be interesting to have been able to talk to him today to find out, what sort of reaction there might have been between those two backstage. You might also, Peter, want to talk to the Soweto Gospel Choir. Back in 2009, at the inaugural Nelson Mandela Day concert at Radio City Music Hall here in New York, which I was privileged enough to attend, Aretha Franklin performed with backup from the Soweto Gospel Choir. So I imagine that they have some stories from a local perspective to share, certainly with our audience back home in South Africa.
So what will Americans be saying? I mean, we're calling her the Queen of Soul, but this was a woman, I think, that transcended all audiences, audience profiles and types. There's no one who didn't know Aretha Franklin, and certainly songs like Respect come to mind that people could just sort of sing off.
A Natural Woman, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. These were really iconic songs that really became emblematic of the feminist movement in the United States. Let's hear from some of the Americans. Carole King, Aretha Franklin, for example, performed at the Kennedy Center Music Honors, where essentially it's an award ceremony where the United States president is the patron, and there was a tribute to Carole King, and Aretha Franklin, wearing a big fur coat, came out to play on the piano and sing A Natural Woman. And of course, in true Aretha Franklin diva style, the coat always comes off at a poignant moment in the performance, and of course the crowd goes crazy. And that essentially, one commentator was describing on local television here that if you search for a diva in the dictionary, there would be a picture of Aretha Franklin. Carole King saying, "What a life, what a legacy, so much love, respect and gratitude." Dion Ross tweeted a short time ago, "I am sitting in prayer for the wonderful golden spirit that is Aretha Franklin." Let me read that statement from Hillary and former President Bill Clinton. Hillary and I mourn the loss of our friend Aretha Franklin. She also actually performed at one of the galas, the presidential galas, when Bill Clinton in the early 1990s was inaugurated as president. One of America's greatest national treasures. You'll hear a lot of that. For more than 50 years, she stirred our soul. She was elegant, graceful, and utterly uncompromising in her artistry. Aretha's first music school was the church, and her performances were powered by what she learned there. I'll always be grateful for her kindness and support, including her performances at both my inaugural celebrations, and for the chance to be there for what sadly turned out to be her final performance, of course referring to that Elton John Gala, the 25th anniversary of his AIDS Foundation here in New York last year.
Yeah, and her voice, distinct, unique, there was none like her.
She was the queen. I was watching an interview that she did with a local Detroit correspondent a couple of years ago, and she was asked to give her opinion, Peter, on some of the iconic music names that we know today. The likes of Adele, Whitney Houston, and Aretha really had a very high opinion of herself, and that's not a criticism. She knew she had it, right? And so I think the word she used to describe Whitney Houston, who's also regarded as one of the greatest singers of all time, I think she described her as a real talent. Those were, and that was a compliment from Aretha. So, Adele, a good musician or something like that, but she wasn't, overly congratulatory or enthusiastic in describing even equal talents around the world. She was Aretha Franklin, and she knew that. There's a scene, a video, which I can share with you in a bit, where she walks out to perform at the White House, and Patti LaBelle tries to sort of tug her on the arm, and she sort of whips her arm out of the way, almost like, "Don't touch me, Patty." So, Aretha Franklin was many things, but the one thing she will always be remembered for is being really the best, at the top of her game whenever she gave a performance, and a real loss to not only America, but people who loved her music around the world.
All right, Sherwin, we're going to have to leave it there, but I'm sure this is a story that's going to run for quite a while as people continue to share their tributes and their thoughts. But thanks very much indeed for that update. That was Sherwin Bryce-Pease, our US correspondent, talking to us, of course, the passing of Aretha Franklin, the news that we've just received literally in the last hour or so.